Hello, we come to you today to provide an overview and support of our findings as it relates to promotional markdown analysis. Our group took a look at the relationship between the company's total sales and their markdowns across their international stores. The team leveraged and analyzed the information to support the company is making data-based decisions for 4 of their international stores. To begin, we needed to understand what our goals were to be successful. Looking at the 4 locations in Munich, Dubai, London, and New York, we needed clarity around how the varying markdowns impacted total sales. Also, we needed a clearer understanding of other factors that we may have impacted total sales, such as holidays, unemployment, weather, consumer price index, etc. We looked at these from the perspective of what it is the total overall burden on the promotional markdowns across these locations when these impactors were negatively visible. We began to prepare the data using frequency and explore, ANOVA, regression, and bivariate correlation analysis to gain better insight of the impact of promotional markdowns. We then analyzed the data to ensure there were no errors in the data that would provide false positive or negative to the data. For total sales exceeding $3 million, as shown in our hypothesis on the left, we looked at the sum here to answer this question, which brings us to rejecting the null hypothesis since the total sales comes out above $3 million. We would also reject the null hypothesis for the average sales exceeding 20,000, which is shown on the right, because our research showed the total sales mean is greater than $20,000.
Next, we looked at the variability of total sales across all 4 stores. And using a descriptive statistic analysis, we can reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis that total sales varied by more than $10,000 across the 4 locations. You can see that the standard deviation and the variance statistic both exceed 10,000. And then on the right-hand side, you can also see an explore analysis chart that shows the variance in a more visual manner. Next, we looked at the total sales for the year across all 4 stores and whether or not they're equal. This graph helps us clearly see that total sales for the year were not equal across all 4 stores, and therefore we failed to reject the null hypothesis. You can see that Dubai was the leading store, whereas London was the worst performing of the 4. Next, we looked at sales from promotional markdowns for the year and whether or not they were equal across all 5 departments of within our analysis. And we used this descriptive statistics to look at these markdowns, and the results are displayed in the output. And we can see that the automotive department had the largest amount of sales from promotional markdowns for the year at more than $1.6 million. And therefore, we failed to reject the null hypothesis, and that sales from promotional markdowns were not equal across all 5 departments. And we can actually see that men's clothing had the lowest amount of sales for the year. Next, we looked at the average total sales for the year on holidays versus non-holidays. And using an independent sample t-test, we can see that total sales were not the same for holidays as they were for holidays. In fact, sales are much higher for holidays, as you can see both in the independent samples t-test output, as well as the chart that we've displayed in the top right-hand corner that shows the holidays versus non-holiday sales for all 4 different locations.
We were asked to compare total sales across all the locations and to see if Munich was the top performing store by more than 10,000. We ran a univariate analysis with a post hoc testing to determine if Munich outperformed the other stores by more than 10,000. Munich represents store number 1, and the results of the analysis show that Munich did not outperform the other stores by more than 10,000 and agrees with the null hypothesis. We were next asked to determine if consumer price index and total sales for the year are related. We ran a bivariate correlation analysis to determine the relationship between CPI and total sales for the year. The resulting analysis told us that there is a significant weak negative relationship as determined by R equals negative 0.191 and a p-value that is less than 0.05 between the CPI and total sales for the year, and it agrees with the alternative hypothesis. We were then asked to determine how unemployment and total sales for the year are related, and we again ran a bivariate correlation analysis between unemployment and total sales. And the analysis told us that we failed to reject the null hypothesis and that there is not a significant relationship between unemployment and total sales. Therefore, we reject the null hypothesis and there is no relationship between unemployment and total sales. We were next asked to compare how the average temperature and total sales for the year are related. Again, we ran a bivariate correlation analysis between temperature and total sales, and the analysis shows that there is a significant relationship between temperature and total sales, and we therefore reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis, concluding that there is a relationship between temperature and sales. More specifically, there is a negative correlation in that as temperature decreases, total sales also decrease.
Okay, for next thing, we were asked to compare the CPI, unemployment, and temperature, and is CPI the best predictor of total sales for the year? For this linear regression analysis, 3 models were run. The first had a consumer price index as the only independent variable. It is concluded that the CPI accounts for 3.7% of the variance in total sales for the year. The second model included unemployment. By adding that, 6.2% of the variance in total sales for the year is recorded. And the third model is the in addition of all 3 independent variables, which is CPI, unemployment, and temperature. With the addition of all 3, the total variance is 12.3%. Despite only certain models being run for this multilinear regression, all 3 p-values for CPI, unemployment, and temperature are significant. According to the SPSS, the results of this multilinear regression, we need further analysis to fully evaluate the identified data, which is standardized residuals that are plus or minus 3. Result for this analysis agrees with the alternative hypothesis that the CPI is the best predictor of total sales for the year when comparing CPI, unemployment, and temperature. Next, is Munich the top performing store for housewares? So an analysis of variance was utilized for this particular question. Here you see store number 1, Munich, with an estimated marginal means of analysis, or an estimated marginal means of 2526.86. Both Dubai and London outperformed Munich in the houseware section. This can be also observed by looking at descriptive statistics and observing the significance based on the mean. The result is the analysis agrees with the null hypothesis that Munich is not the top performing store for housewares. Next question is Dubai the top performing store for men's clothing? This was also utilized for an analysis of variance. Here you can see the Dubai store number 2 with an estimated marginal means of 4638.07. New York happened to outperform Dubai. This can be observed from the summation of each city in regards to sales of men's clothing. The result is the analysis agrees with the null hypothesis that Dubai is not the top performing store for men's clothing. Our recommendations for this particular business moving forward would be to ensure that warm weather promotional markdowns are prioritized. Holiday promotional markdowns are necessary for continuing to contribute to the total sales numbers. Additionally, There are two areas of opportunity, which are men's clothing as a whole and then London's automotive sector. Per Great Britain's Department of Transport, London and surrounding areas are responsible for 83% of passenger travel by car, van, or taxi, leaving a large opportunity for growth, expansion, and sales. This concludes our analysis and our presentation. Thank you very much from Team 13.